Once upon a time, a king fell gravely ill in his royal palace. The country's finest doctors and magicians gathered to consult, but they couldn't find a cure. However, an old doctor, well versed in magic, spoke up. "There's only one remedy for our king," he said. "In India, there's a special garden with a tree that grows the apple of life. If the king eats one of these apples, he'll be healed and become as healthy as a newborn baby." The king replied, "But I've heard that fierce giants guard that tree. They pick the fruit as soon as it ripens. No mortal can get near it." The king's 3 sons were standing nearby. The eldest stepped forward and declared, "Long live the king! I'll go and bring the apple of life for you." With that, he bid farewell to his father and set off. After a long and perilous journey, the eldest prince finally reached the tree bearing the apple of life. But on the night the fruit ripened, he was overcome by a deep sleep. The giant came, picked the fruit, and left. In the morning, seeing the apple was gone, the prince returned home to report his failure. The following year, the second brother undertook the expedition. Unfortunately, he too fell into the same deep sleep on the crucial night. The third year, the youngest brother approached his father and said, "Long live the king! I'll go and bring the fruit." The king looked at him doubtfully. "Your older brother's failed. What makes you think you'll succeed?" But the young prince was persistent. He pleaded with his father repeatedly until the king finally gave his permission. Armed with his bow and arrows, the youngest prince journeyed to the tree. On the critical night when the apple was due to ripen, he felt a heavy sleep trying to overtake him. Thinking quickly, he cut one of his fingers and rubbed salt into the cut. The sharp pain kept him awake. In the middle of the night, as lightning flashed and thunder roared, a terrifying giant appeared and began climbing the tree. The prince took aim with his bow and shot the giant in the leg. Roaring in pain, the giant fled. The prince then climbed the tree, picked the apple of life, and brought it back to his father. The king ate it and was soon restored to perfect health. After his father's recovery, the youngest prince said, "Please allow me to go and take revenge on my enemy." The king agreed, and the 2 older brothers decided to accompany him. They followed the giant's trail of blood to the mouth of an immeasurably deep chasm. It was clear the giant had entered it. The eldest brother volunteered, "Tie a rope around my waist and lower me down. I want to fight him." The other 2 brothers did as he asked, but before he was halfway down, the eldest brother started shouting, "I'm burning! I'm roasting! Pull me up!" They quickly hauled him back to the surface. Then the second brother tried his luck. "Lower me down," he said, but he too began to cry out just like his older brother and was pulled back up. Finally, it was the youngest brother's turn. He said, "Let me down, and the more I shout, 'I'm burning, I'm roasting,' the further you should lower me." They agreed, and the more he cried out, the deeper they let him descend. At last he reached the bottom and began to explore. Soon he came across a fearsome giant lying down, his head resting in the lap of a stunningly beautiful maiden. She was so radiant that she could have told the moon, "Moon, you needn't shine, for I am shining." The maiden was sewing, and before her a golden rat and a golden cat were playing in a golden basin. When she saw the prince, she exclaimed, "Human, not even a snake on its belly or a bird with its wing would dare come here. How did you manage it?" The prince replied smoothly, "Your love brought me here." "Young man," the maiden warned, "if you value your life, leave now. If this giant wakes up, he'll cut you into pieces no larger than your ear." "Wake him up," the prince said boldly. "I've come to fight him." The maiden explained, "He sleeps for 40 days. It's only been 8 days since he fell asleep. You have 32 more days to wait before he wakes. But if you can't wait that long, heat that plowshare in the fire until it's red hot, then press it against his legs. That will wake him." The prince did as she suggested. As the hot iron touched his legs, the giant began to stir, mumbling, "Oh, what insects are biting my legs?" "Insects," the maiden scoffed. "Get up. A human has come to fight you." The giant opened his eyes and, seeing the prince, exclaimed hungrily, "What a delicious breakfast this morning!" "Get up, monster. the prince challenged. Let's see who fortune will favor, you or me. They prepared their bows and arrows. The giant offered, "You shoot first." "No," the prince replied, "you shoot first." The giant took his shot, but the prince dodged it skillfully. Now it was the prince's turn. He took aim and shot the giant through the heart, pinning him to the ground. Then he swiftly cut off the giant's head. Leaving the giant's body behind, the prince ventured further. To his surprise, he found another giant asleep, his head in the lap of an even more beautiful maiden. She was so lovely she outshone even the moon. She too was sewing, with a golden hen and a golden weasel playing in a golden basin before her. Seeing the prince, this maiden also exclaimed, "Human! Not even a snake on its belly or a bird with its wing could come here. How did you dare to enter?" The prince gave the same smooth reply, "Your love brought me here." "If you value your life," she warned, "avoid this giant while he sleeps. If he wakes, he'll tear you to pieces." "Wake him up!" the prince insisted. "I've come to fight him." The maiden pointed to an iron bar. "Heat that until it's red hot and press it on his feet. That will wake him." The prince did as instructed. As the hot iron touched his feet, the giant stirred, grumbling, "Oh, what gnats are biting me." "Gnats?" the maiden scoffed. "Get up! A human has come to fight you?" The giant saw the prince and licked his lips. "Oh, what a tasty morsel has come to me on his own legs." "Come on," the prince challenged. "Let's see who fortune will favor." They fought, and this giant, too, met the same fate as the first. The prince cut off his head and moved on. Soon he encountered a third giant, also asleep with his head in the lap of an even more beautiful maiden. She was so radiant she could have told the sun, "Sun, you need not shine, for I am shining." She was sewing with a golden greyhound, and a golden fox racing in a golden basin before her. The moment the prince saw this maiden, he fell deeply in love. The maiden, too, was instantly smitten. She said, "Oh, noble human, not even a snake on its belly or a bird with its wing can enter here. How did you manage to come?" The prince replied, "Your love brought me here, fair creature." "Be careful, precious youth," she warned. "If this giant wakes, he'll tear you to pieces." "Wake him," the prince insisted. "I've come to fight him." Once again, a hot iron was applied to the giant's feet. He awoke, grumbling, "Oh, what's biting me?" "What?" the maiden exclaimed. "Get up! A human has come to fight you." The giant spotted the prince and grinned. "Oh, what a tasty featherless partridge for breakfast." The prince noticed the giant's wounded leg and recognized him as the one who had tried to steal the apple of life. "Come," he challenged. "Let's see who fortune will favor." They began to fight. After a fierce battle, this giant met the same fate as the others, and the prince cut his throat. The prince then gathered the three maidens, who revealed they were princesses stolen by the giants and kept alive with the apples of life. They showed him the giants' houses, treasures, and belongings. The prince took what he wanted and prepared 3 chests for the maidens, keeping only a lightning sword for himself. In the giant's stable, the prince found 3 lightning-fast horses, 1 black, 1 red, and 1 white. The youngest maiden advised him to pluck 3 hairs from each horse's tail and keep them. The prince did as she suggested. They returned to the bottom of the chasm where the prince had descended. The rope was still hanging there. The prince tied the oldest maiden and her chest to the rope, calling up to his brothers, "This is the betrothed of my oldest brother, and the chest is her dowry." He then tied the second maiden and her chest, saying, "This is the betrothed of my second brother, and the chest is her dowry." Now it was the youngest maiden's turn. She said to the prince, "You go up first." "No," the prince replied. "You must go first." The maiden argued, "When your brothers see me, they won't pull you up. You'll be left here. I love you. I worry for you." The prince reassured her, "They're my brothers. Do you think they'd harm me? Go up, I insist." "Alas," the maiden sighed, "I'll obey. But if you do remain here, as I fear you will, follow my instructions. Next Friday evening, 3 rams will come, 1 black, one red and one white. Jump onto the black ram immediately. He'll throw you to the red to the white, and the white will toss you to the upper world. But if you make a mistake, you're lost." The maiden continued, "Take this magic ring as a token of my love. Whatever you desire, kiss this ring and you'll have it. And when you're in need, throw the 3 horsehairs into a fire, and the horses will come to you immediately. Farewell, my love." "Farewell," the prince replied, and the maiden was drawn up. When the 2 older brothers saw the youngest maiden, they were amazed by her beauty. They exclaimed, "Look, he's kept the most beautiful one for himself and given us the less attractive ones." Consumed by envy, they took the 3 maidens and left, abandoning their younger brother at the bottom of the chasm. On Friday evening, the 3 rams appeared as the maiden had foretold. The prince, distressed and forgetful of the maiden's instructions, desperately threw himself onto the white ram's back. It tossed him to the red, which threw him to the black, which in turn hurled him into the world of darkness. In the pitch-black world, the prince groped his way until he found a door. He knocked. "Who's there?" An old woman's voice called from inside. "I'm a poor orphan, without father or mother," the prince replied pitifully. "Come in then," the old woman said, opening the door. "I have no children. I'll be your mother and you'll be my son. We'll live together, and God will provide for us." After settling in, the prince said, "Mother, please give me some water. I'm thirsty." The old woman sighed heavily. "Oh, my son, you're asking for the hardest thing in the world. We have no water here. Be patient until we can get some." Surprised, the prince asked, "Why don't you have water now?" "Alas," she explained, "there's only one fountain in our country, and it's guarded by a terrible dragon. Every day, a maiden must be sacrificed to him, or he won't let anyone take water. After he finishes his meal, he stops the fountain from flowing again. Today, the last maiden in the country, the prince's only daughter, is to be given to the dragon. Listen, I hear a commotion in the streets. They must be taking the maiden to the dragon now." The prince looked out and saw a crowd leading a maiden, as beautiful as the moon. He followed them to the fountain, where they left the maiden alone and departed. The prince approached her and said, "Fair maiden, don't be afraid. Let me sleep in your lap, and when the dragon comes, wake me. I'll save you." She agreed, and he fell asleep in her lap. Soon the dragon began creeping towards them, its mouth wide open, its tail coiled, hissing with joy at finding 2 victims instead of 1. The terrified maiden was frozen with fear. She couldn't speak or move to wake the prince. She could only weep, her warm tears falling on the prince's face. The prince jolted awake and saw, to his horror, that the dragon had already partially swallowed the maiden. With only moments to spare, he faced a dilemma. He couldn't cut the dragon's throat without injuring the maiden's feet. Thinking quickly, he drew his lightning sword and placed it in the maiden's lap. As the dragon swallowed the maiden completely, the sword sliced through its mouth and down its side, cutting it in 2. The maiden emerged unharmed. The prince then cut off the dragon's head and said to her, "Now, fair one, go to your parents." Before leaving, the maiden dipped her hand in the dragon's blood and made a red mark on the prince's back. They then parted ways, she to her father and he to his adopted mother. With the dragon slain, the fountain flowed freely, and people rejoiced in their newfound access to water. Later, the prince asked the old woman, "Mother, why is your country so dark?" She sighed and explained, "My son, there's a massive eagle living on top of that mountain. Every year she hatches young ones, but a dragon eats them. The eagle, thinking humans are responsible, deprives us of sunlight in revenge." Determined to help, the prince bid farewell to the old woman and climbed the mountain to the eagle's nest. He hid behind a rock to watch. Soon a gigantic dragon appeared, creeping towards the young birds. Just as it was about to devour them, the prince drew his lightning sword and cut the dragon into pieces. He then fed the dragon's flesh to the eaglets, which chirped happily. Hearing her chicks' cheerful chirping, the mother eagle rushed back, swift as lightning. Seeing the prince, she assumed he was the one who had been devouring her young each year and was about to tear him apart. But her chicks cried out, "Stop, mother! This noble youth saved us from the dragon and fed us its flesh." The eagle, realizing her mistake, turned to the prince gratefully. "Brave youth! What can I do to reward you for your heroic deed?" "Nothing," the prince replied, "except to carry me on your wings to the upper world." "You're asking the hardest thing in the world," the eagle said. "But for a hero like you, I'll do anything, even sacrifice my life if necessary. Bring me 40 bottles of wine and 40 sheep's tails, and I'll grant your request." Meanwhile, in the upper world, the maiden saved from the dragon had returned to her father. The prince was furious to see her alive. "You little rogue," he scolded. "You want to save your own life while thousands die of thirst. Go back and let the dragon devour you so we can have water." The maiden quickly explained how a brave hero had saved her by killing the dragon, and that the fountain was now flowing freely. Hearing this, the prince sent heralds to proclaim that the man who saved his daughter should come forward. He would not only marry the princess, but receive any gift he desired. Thousands of young men claimed to be the hero, but the princess rejected them all. The prince asked, "Is there no one else in the town?" "No one," his officials replied, "except a young stranger staying with a poor widow." "Bring him here," the prince commanded. When the young man was brought before them, the princess immediately pointed to the blood mark on his back, exclaiming, "This is the hero." The prince turned to the young man and said, "The maiden you saved is yours to marry. Ask for anything else you desire." "Long live the prince," the young man replied. "May heaven bless your daughter's union with a suitable husband, and may you enjoy your estates for many years. I ask only for 40 bottles of wine and 40 sheep's tails, so the eagle can take me to the upper world." The prince granted his request immediately. The young man took the supplies to the eagle, who instructed him, "Place the sheep's tails on my right wing and the wine bottles on my left. Sit between them. When I say boo, pour a bottle of wine into my mouth. When I say coo, give me a sheep's tail." Before leaving, the young man bid farewell to the old woman, who gave him her blessing. As they ascended, the eagle called out boo and coo alternately, and the young man followed her instructions. They climbed higher and higher until they finally reached the world of light. "Coo!" the eagle called one last time. In his excitement, the young man dropped the last sheep's tail. Not wanting to disappoint his friend, he quickly drew his sword and cut off a piece of his own calf, giving it to the eagle. The wise bird recognized the taste of human flesh, but kept it under her tongue. When they landed, she said, "Well, now you can go on your way." "No," the young man said. "You go first. My legs are numb. I need to rest a bit." The eagle insisted until the young man tried to walk, but he couldn't due to his wound. Realizing what had happened, the eagle took the flesh from under her tongue, placed it back on the young man's leg, and licked it. The wound healed instantly. After bidding farewell to the hero, the eagle flew back to her chicks. From that day on, she never deprived that country of sunlight again. Before entering his father's city, the young man decided to disguise himself. He went to a slaughterhouse and wrapped a sheep's stomach around his head, making himself look bald. Entering the city as a stranger, he learned that a wedding ceremony was to be held in his father's palace. His 2 brothers were to marry the 2 maidens he had saved for them, and his own betrothed was to marry the king. Heartbroken, the young man went to the marketplace and asked a goldsmith to take him on as an apprentice. The goldsmith hesitated but finally agreed, saying, "Come on then, Baldy, you can be my apprentice." That very day, the king's officials brought the goldsmith a large bag of gold, saying, "You must make a golden rat and a golden cat that play in a golden basin." The goldsmith protested, "I can make the rat and cat, but I can't bring them to life." "That's not our concern," the officials replied. "It's the king's command. Make them by tomorrow or lose your head. The lady the king wants to marry demands these before she'll agree to wed him." The goldsmith was distraught, unsure how to complete this impossible task. The bald-headed apprentice noticed his master's distress and asked, "What's wrong, master? Why are you so worried?" "Be quiet," the goldsmith snapped. "I don't have time for your chatter." "Don't worry, master," the apprentice said calmly. "If you bring me 2 or 3 handfuls of nuts, I'll make the golden rat and cat tonight." The goldsmith, exasperated, exclaimed, "You rascal! You bald-headed dog! As if I'm not troubled enough, now you're making fun of me." "No, master," the apprentice insisted. "I'm serious. Bring me some nuts, and tomorrow morning you'll have what you need." Figuring he had nothing to lose, the goldsmith brought the nuts. That night he couldn't sleep, and often checked on the apprentice, hearing only the sound of nuts being cracked and eaten. At daybreak, the apprentice took out the magic ring given to him by his betrothed. He kissed it, and immediately 2 genies appeared, asking, "What is your will? We'll do it at once." "Bring me the golden rat and cat playing in the golden basin that I saw before," the apprentice commanded. In an instant the golden basin appeared before him. Just then the goldsmith entered, his heart racing. "Here, master," the apprentice said. "I've just finished it." The goldsmith was overjoyed. He took the basin to the king, who was so pleased that he gave the goldsmith valuable gifts and invited him to the royal wedding. When the goldsmith returned, he was so happy he couldn't stop dancing. The apprentice asked, "Master, please take me with you to the wedding." "But my lad," the goldsmith replied, "there will be a tournament tomorrow. If you go, I'm afraid you'll be trampled by horses and get your bald head broken. You'd better stay home." The next day, as the goldsmith went to the tournament, the apprentice cast the black horse's hair into the fire. Immediately, the black horse of the first giant appeared, fully armoured. The apprentice donned the armour and mounted the horse, transforming into a black knight. He rode to the tournament, where he defeated all the princes and his own brothers. He even unhorsed his master before disappearing, leaving everyone astonished. Back home he changed his clothes and became the bald apprentice once more. That evening, when the goldsmith returned, the apprentice eagerly asked about the tournament. The goldsmith described the event, saying, "The most surprising thing was a black knight in full armour. Whether he was a fairy or a human, I can't say. He defeated everyone, even unhorsed me, then vanished like the wind." The apprentice just shook his head, pretending not to understand. Meanwhile, the princess, seeing the golden rat and cat, was certain her betrothed had returned from the underworld. She told the king, "I won't marry you until you get me a golden hen and a golden weasel playing in a golden basin." The king sent his order to the goldsmith, who again sought the apprentice's help. Once more, the apprentice used his magic ring to summon the golden hen and weasel in a golden basin. The goldsmith delivered these to the king, who invited him to the second day's tournament. As before, the apprentice asked to accompany his master, but was refused. After the goldsmith left, the apprentice cast the red horse's hair into the fire. The red horse appeared, bearing red armour. Donning this, the apprentice rode to the tournament as a red knight. He defeated everyone, including his master, before vanishing. At home, he resumed his disguise as the bald apprentice. That evening, the goldsmith excitedly described the tournament, with the apprentice listening in feigned amazement. The princess, now certain of her betrothed's return, made one final demand of the king. "I want a golden greyhound and a golden fox running a race in a golden basin, or I won't marry you." Once again, the goldsmith turned to his apprentice. Using his magic ring, the apprentice produced the requested items. The goldsmith delivered them to the king and was invited to the third day's tournament. This time the apprentice cast the white horse's hair into the fire. The white horse appeared with white armour. Transformed into a white knight and wielding his sword of lightning, the apprentice rode to the tournament. At the tournament, the white knight defeated everyone. Then, in a shocking turn of events, he killed the king and his own unworthy brothers. Standing amidst the stunned crowd, he revealed his true identity. He recounted all his heroic deeds and the wrongs he had endured. The people, tired of their tyrannical king, immediately hailed the young prince as their new monarch. He married his betrothed and gave the other 2 maidens in marriage to 2 of his most loyal friends. Thus, the young prince finally attained his heart's desire. He had overcome great adversity, proved his worth, and found true love. His clever disguises and magical aids had served him well, But it was his bravery, kindness, and perseverance that truly won him the crown and his bride. As he took his place on the throne with his beloved by his side, the kingdom entered a new era of peace and prosperity. The prince, now king, ruled with wisdom and compassion, never forgetting the lessons he had learned on his extraordinary journey.